Okay, great. We are live on YouTube. Recording भी चालू है. So we have backup for this session. If someone misses the session, they can watch it again. So okay, great. We are live on YouTube. Recording भी चालू है. So we sorry. Good evening, everyone. Once again, yeah, Ganpati Bappa Moria. Let's start this session. And yes, as I said, we are going to see the logging part, monitoring part, which is very important. Even if you are not preparing for the CKD exam or a CK exam, you should know how to check the logs, how to monitor your Kubernetes cluster, how to monitor your application, and how to debug the issues in Kubernetes. बहुत लोग ऐसे होते हैं that they will clear the certification exams, but when it comes to debugging the issues of the Kubernetes cluster and application which are deployed in the Kubernetes cluster, they face miserably, and we don't want to be those people, correct? So are you interested for this session? Okay, great. Thank you guys. So let's start. The first question, or have you used the Prometheus or Grafana before this? Or I would also, no, okay, fine. Okay, I'll quickly give you overview about what is this Prometheus Grafana, but you should know this tool. Prometheus Grafana is an open source tool for collecting the metrics and visualizing your Kubernetes cluster. And yeah, whenever you are going for the Kubernetes interview for a DevOps or SRE interview, they will definitely ask you whether you know any monitoring or the logging tool or not. And if you are attending this session, uh, I'm sure that you will have an advantage during the interviews because we are going to see how to deploy this Prometheus Grafana setup to monitor our Kubernetes cluster. Right? And this will be a good project to have you on your resume. Okay, so I'll also suggest follow this session. If you are not able to follow this hands-on right now, that is fine. But make sure you are doing some blogging. You write a blog, or you at least have these steps mentioned somewhere on a GitHub or somewhere, and to include in your resume. And plus, you will also get a hands-on because hands-on is important. Okay, so I'll quickly open my PPT. Stop my video. अगर कुछ क्वेश्चन होंगे तो प्लीज ड्रॉप दोज क्वेश्चंस इन चैट. चार्ट थोड़ा मुझे धीरे स्क्रॉल करना पड़ेगा, अदरवाइज ब्राउजर फिर से हैंग हो जाएगा. आई नो इफ इट इज प्रॉब्लम विद जूम और व्हाट, बट हैंग होता है. ठीक है. Okay, this session, particularly in a SICAD exam, has a 15% of weightage. The questions are very easy, but we are not here only for a SICAD. We are also learning this or attending these sessions because here you will get actual knowledge how to debug the issues in your, how to use the Kubernetes in real time, right? So the main thing we are going to cover is probes and the health checks. We are going to see the tools which can help us to monitor Kubernetes application and Kubernetes cluster, how to check the Kubernetes container logs or the pod logs, and how to debug the issues. Okay. So first thing first, we are going to see the logging part because it's not a big topic. We have already used this logging, and I have also ran this command in previous sessions as well. So applications logs can help you to, why do we need this logging for Kubernetes applications or the Kubernetes cluster? Because these application logs help us to understand what is actually happening with our application. Application logs helps us to particularly useful for debugging problems and monitoring cluster activity. You might have written any Python or Node.js application, जहाँ पे we use some libraries to, or just do a echo or a bring to debug where we are actually inside the program, or at which stage we are in. We use the if else, or if else may will put some message ki, this I am inside a if, or else के case में we can write I am else, just to understand कि कौन सा condition execute हो रहा है. If you are a beginner, I'm just giving you example. But yeah, for proper application, you will use some libraries for Node.js or a Python application to write your logs in a proper format, and which can help you to debug the issues later on. Whenever you get an issue for your live application, you should be able to see what's exactly happened, why particular service is not giving you response, what is happening inside the application, correct? Similarly, but yeah, when we are talking about the Kubernetes, our application is inside the pod, and pod has multiple contents. So how to check the logs of our application when it is running inside a pod? However, the native functionality provided by a container engine or a runtime is usually not enough for a complete logging solution. But we have a simple commands which can help us to check the logs of our pod or the container, and which can help us to debug the issues faster, which can help us to check what is actually happening inside a cluster. Okay. If you are new, I'll quickly tell you कि ये क्या हो रहा है. हम जब Kubernetes यूज करते हैं for our application, okay, so we deploy our application inside a pod. This is my pod. Okay, एक रिसोर्स है, जस्ट कंसिडर करो एक बक्सा है, उसके अंदर हमारे कंटेनर्स रन हो रहे, एंड कंटेनर्स के अंदर हमारा एप्लीकेशन रन होता है. ओके, दिस इज माय एप्लीकेशन, एंड वन pod can have a multiple containers, multiple different containers which should work together. Tight binding होना चाहिए उनका. Okay. So how to check the logs of this application or logs of this pod? What is happening inside this container, or what is happening inside this pod? So the command is very simple. We have used it multiple times. Kubectl logs is a command which can help us to check the logs of our pod. So I'll quickly deploy one simple application. Kubernetes डॉक्यूमेंटेशन से एक सैंपल उठा लेते हैं. ओके, and this works for every pod in for your application pod or for your this Nginx pod also. So I deploy this v1.yaml. This is my Nginx pod. You can see this is a YAML file. We have already covered all these instructions what we are writing inside this. So I am creating this pod kubectl apply -f v1.yaml. So it will create a new pod. I think there is Nginx pod already existed here. So we'll delete it. Pod को delete करने का command kubectl delete pod Nginx. Pods, and now I can create a pod again. Okay, pod is created. Kubectl get pods will give me the list of the pods. It is creating state. If your pod is not in running state, then what command you will use to check or debug the issues, why it is creating or not creating? Just do a kubectl describe pod. It will give you the events, and events you can check what is exactly happening when you are running these commands. So pod is scheduled, default scheduler successfully assigned this Nginx pod to minikube node. Once that is done, next step is it is pulling that image, Nginx image on minikube node. And after that, it is saying created this container and then started this container. So it is going through multiple steps. First, it is getting scheduled. After that, the image is pulled on the minikube node. Once the image is successfully pulled, the container is getting created, and the last step is container is started. So now it will show that this pod is in running state. Nginx pod is in running state. Okay. Once the container inside the pod are started or in running state, the Kubernetes will mark this pod as the running state. Okay. So now that was before, or if you are saying the state other than running state, if your pod is not getting scheduled, okay, I'll create one more pod which will show running state v1.yaml. I'll simply give some random image which should not be exit. इसे कुछ गलत नाम देता था I'm giving to start this pod. Okay. We did not change the name of the pod. So let's create this new pod, Nginx 2. And let's wait for it. Let's see if it is getting created or not. First wala bhi, it is giving error image pool. So if you see the status, non-running status of your pod, it's not in running state. So how you will debug this issue? Just check the events or the describe the pod. Subtitle describe pod Nginx. Okay. Now in event section, you can see what is happening exactly. The pod is assigned to the minikube node. The image is pulled on the minikube node. It started creating container. That was before changing the image tag, correct? Then again, when we change the image tag or the image name in our YAML file to create a new pod, it started pulling the image, but the image is not present. There is no image called ngix. We gave the wrong image name. So it is saying image pull back off. It failed to pull that image. It is not present. You can see here the proper message is error message is given. Failed to pull image. This image is not put, and because of that, this pod has marked as error image pull status. Same for image pull back off and error image pull. Okay. So that's how you should check the issues, what is happening with your pod if you are not seeing the status as running. Okay, check the events. So there is also one command called kubectl events, which will show you the events of your Kubernetes cluster. But this is entirely of the entire cluster. If you want to filter it out, you can filter for the particular namespace, or you can get the output in different format. You can continuously watch these events using -w. Okay, these are the events actually happening in your Kubernetes cluster. But if you want to check the events for particular pod, just do the kubectl describe pod, and there will be one section called events, which will show you the actual events of this only pod. Okay, this is one way. Now some of these pods are running. We'll create one more pod in the next 3, giving a proper image name. तो ये वाला pod start हो जाएगा. अगर pod running state में है, and if you want to check the logs of that pod, then what you will do? This Nginx 3 pod is in running state. I want to check the logs of this pod. kubectl logs and give a name of that. Okay. There is nothing right now inside this pod, so there are no logs. If you want to check the logs continuously, you can add one more flag called -f. So it will keep on streaming the logs for this pod. Okay. We are going to write one application, so it will show actual the logs of our application. And similarly, if you want to check the continuous logs of your pod, you can add -f option. If you want to check the logs of the one of the container, then you can add the -c option and container name. If you want to check the logs of the previous pod, then you can use the option called -previous. And you can also check the logs of all the pods, multiple pods using the labels. So labels ka usage we are now understanding how it is getting used in multiple, uh, for multiple purpose. So what we'll do, we will deploy this application. I have this application. It's a simple application. Python based Flask application which only shows the status. So we'll use it for now. This application I designed for Healthcheck probe demo, but we will use the same application and then we will also do the Healthcheck probes for this application later. Okay, I'm commenting out few things here. Okay, let's try to deploy this application in our Kubernetes cluster. फर्स्ट वी विल नीड टू बिल्ड दिस डॉकर इमेज. तो ये मेरा डॉकर फाइल पहले लिखा है हमने. सिंपल है. We are using a base image as Python Alpine. We are copying the required files, requirement.txt and app.py. Then we are also installing the dependencies, Flask and Flask key required display. Once that is done, we are simply running this container. Okay. So the Docker build -t. I guess आपको ये दिख. The font size is very small. बढ़ा देता हूँ 30. इसका साइज नहीं बढ़ता क्या? टर्मिनल का साइज नहीं बढ़ रहा है. So let it be. I'm executing the command docker build -t to create a Docker image for our application. Okay. Flask app. It is installing the dependencies now inside the Docker image. And once that is done, we can check the Docker images available. And you can see there is one new image created 6 seconds ago, Flask app latest. The next thing we are going to do is we will use the same image in our deployment.yaml file. Deployment.yaml file. Here we will use this image. Image : Flask app. let's see. So I'll go inside the Kubernetes folder. One second. I think you will not be able to see it from here. I'll use my terminal. Okay. Increase the font here. Change 14 to 24. भी बहुत small font है. इसको 36 कर देते हैं so that you guys can see this. Reflect नहीं हो रहा है क्या? Fine, कोई problem नहीं. I'll go inside this. For example here, so cd Kubernetes. We will deploy our Flask application here, and I'm going to deploy it using kubectl apply -f. This is our deployment YAML file. Deployment created, and we are also going to deploy this service file. So both the things are created: web app service and web app deployment. Kubectl get deploy and service. Web app deployment and web app services created. Okay. So it is creating 5 replicas. No, we don't want those many. We will create only one replica here and recreate this deployment. Okay, it has reconfigured. This is our deployment and the service. Please ignore this warning. I was trying something and now it's giving me error. Fine, just ignore this part. ये जो आ रहा है ना message, I'll need to check later. But okay. kubectl get deploy -service, deploy service and web. So we have this our deployment here. Let's check what is happening for pod. Pod should be also get created. Web app deployment. It's saying error image pool. Okay. So the same issue. We are providing a wrong image here. Docker images check करते हैं. We have this Flask app. Let's check what image deployment is using. kubectl edit deploy. Using kubectl edit deploy, you can edit the deployment directly here. Okay. So just search for the image, and we might be giving a wrong image name here. Flask app नाम है image. I'll put the same image name here and let's try it again. It's still saying image pull back off, which means some issue with this. Class images present. Any idea why we are getting this issue? इतने messages आ गए. No, not required, because this we discussed earlier as well, that first First, it checks for local Kubernetes pod node. If the image is not present locally, then it will pull the image from a Docker Hub or from your registry. The first priority is your local image. Yeah. I think this issue is because of the Minikube environment. Minikube we need to set one variable, Docker environment variable. Let me check if it is somewhere. Minikube Docker image pull error. Yeah, this thing we need to use. I delete this pod again. Delete pod. Let's check the events for this kubectl describe pod, and the event still saying that Docker login required. No, Docker login not required. Failed to pull image flash gap, RPC error. Denied requested access to the resources denied. Docker login required. Zero of nodes are available. One insufficient CPU preemption. Okay. kubectl git nodes. There we are running this pod. Error image full. Okay. So it is giving issue for two things. One is we have only one node, Minikube node, and the CPU which we assigned to this Minikube is insufficient. And there is no other node to scheduling. So it is saying failed to scheduling. Fine. Then the second error we are seeing here is to fail to pull this error, pull this image. So we redirected this. Now I think we need to build the image again. Let's have. It's okay. We followed these two steps. First, we need to set the Docker point to Minikube, and then we push to Minikube Docker. Okay, let's try it again. kubectl delete pod. Delete get replica set. We are getting two web application deployment, so we need to delete one of this replica set so that we will have only one replica set present here. Okay, एक को delete कर देते हैं. And now let's try pods. kubectl delete pod. So Minikube के कुछ settings अलग होते हैं to use the Docker environment, and yeah, because we have used a deployment वाला session आपने attend किया था. Deployment automatically recreates a pod. Okay, kubectl get replica set. How many deployment we have? Kubectl get deploy web application deployment. I'll delete this deployment and let's try to recreate it. Delete deploy web app deployment. Let's see how many replica sets are so deleted. And now deploy.yaml. Here flask app latest. I'm going to remove this tag and only put the flask app. This is the image we have. Flask app name is correct. So let's try it again. Kubectl deploy. Kubectl apply -f and deployment.yaml. So it will create a deployment replica set and a pod. Deploy and pod. Okay. So our container is creating. If this doesn't work, we might need to use a play with Kubernetes because Minikube का issue लग रहा है मुझे अभी. Error image pool. Kubectl describe pod. Describe this pod again. See, it has assigned this pod to Minikube node, but it is failing to pull that image. No problem. What I'll do, I'll push this image to my Docker registry and let's try once again. Flask app, push this image to my registry. Flask app, colon, people. Up, image is not present. Are we giving a wrong name of this image? Okay. So since we changed the this environment and pointing to Minikube Docker, there is no Flask app image available here. See, तो हमें फिर से यहाँ पे build करना पड़ेगा वो image. This Minikube environment and our local environment works quietly different. So we did this setup ना यहाँ पे eval and set the point to Minikube Docker. And from this Visual Studio Code, it is pointing to the local Docker desktop registry. So that's why we were getting this error. The image was not present. So if we do the Docker images now, so this Flask app is available, and I think our issue should be also get solved now. If not, then we'll push this image again. Delete pod, delete it, and let it create a new pod again. If it fails, then we'll see some other solution. But the first thing we need to check whether this, yeah, see, pooling image, Flask app, error, again error. Okay. So we'll tag this image and push to our Docker registry, Docker hub. Learn with Sagar and Flask app. Learn view. Docker push to my account. it's failing to pull that image from locally. It was not able to find out. Oh, this is a big problem. I don't remember my password. Incorrect password. No. अभी मुझे टाइम पे पासवर्ड याद नहीं आएगा फॉर माय डॉकर हब अकाउंट. Good. Push करते हैं and these image from our docker hub will pass into deployment YAML file और फिर देखते हैं कि whether it is able to pull that image or not because it's publicly available. Yeah, when we set this environment variable, say Docker 2.2 minikube and then push to minikube Docker. Yes, we had to rebuild it because minikube के Docker registry में, local registry में, the image was not present. So we rebuilt it. No worries, debugging is also important. ठीक है, कोई problem नहीं. We'll fix this issue. kubectl delete. We'll not delete this pod now. Just let's edit the deployment instead. Edit deployment. तो ऑटोमेटिकली पॉड बना देगा, रिक्रिएट कर देगा वेब ऐप. इमेज चेंज कर दो यहाँ पे. मिनी क्यूब के अलग इशू रहते हैं. लगता है पॉड चल गया अभी. या सी, ये पॉड चल गया. It was good exercise for me as well because we fixed the issue. We pushed the image for Docker Hub, and then we gave the reference into deployment YAML file, and you can see the pod is running. It is also giving us a log. So this was actually I wanted to demo, but हमारा debugging वाला session भी हो गया इसलिए. These are the logs from the pod, application pod. Any questions? No. But आपको ये debugging समझ में है? How to debug this kind of issues? If the pod is in non-running state, if it is giving issue, just check the description. It was issued in Docker login. कुछ भी हो सकता है. It's not necessarily. For in our case, it was not able to pull the image from our Docker local registry. I think it is somewhere have made some configuration and it is now affecting it. So what we did, instead of pulling that image from locally, we provided the Docker Hub registry image path. Yes, correct, Mehdi. Instead of pulling that image from local registry, we pulled the image from Docker. That's correct. So this is a sequence which we already discussed in previous sessions as well. कि वो पहले local registry में check करता है. Since our local registry is messed up, पता नहीं मैंने कुछ configuration का problem हुआ है मेरे setup में. So if it is not present in a local registry, it will go into Docker Hub and it will pull that image from Docker Hub. That's why we push the image from Docker Hub, push to Docker Hub, and तो यहाँ पे मल्टीपल हमारा प्रैक्टिकल हो गया. हाउ टू पुश द इमेज टू डॉकर हब. आई विल शो द कमांड्स हिस्ट्री में. what we did, I logged into my account and then I built the image first. I tagged the image and then I pushed the same image to Docker to my account. Run with Sagar Flask web Flask app v1. Once the image is pushed to Docker Hub, we edited the deployment file and changed the name of the image to my Docker Hub account image. Okay, so this was the debugging and the logging part, which will be very much required which will be very much required for your projects in the company or internship, and as well as for any Kubernetes certification exams. Always use a Docker registry? No, not necessarily. A Docker registry, particularly Docker Hub, is mainly वहाँ पे publicly available images रहते हैं. Why you should use a local registry or your private registry? Private registry का तो अलग ही advantage है, because you can't keep your company project Docker images into Docker Hub. It will be accessible to everyone. You should have a private registry. ये तीन चीजें, लोकल रजिस्ट्री, प्राइवेट रजिस्ट्री एंड द पब्लिक रजिस्ट्री. प्राइवेट रजिस्ट्री का आपको बताया बिकॉज यू डोंट वांट योर इमेजेस टू बी अवेलेबल फॉर एवरीवन. सिक्योर होना चाहिए, दैट्स व्हाई यू आर गोइंग टू यूज अ प्राइवेट रजिस्ट्री. डॉकर हब, यस, जो पब्लिकली अवेलेबल इमेजेस है विच दोज यू कैन यूज. एंड द लोकल रजिस्ट्री, आई एक्सप्लेन यू द सीक्वेंस क्या होता है. लोकल रजिस्ट्री पे पहले चेक करता है एंड देन इट विल गो टू द डॉकर हब. करेक्ट. एंड इफ यू वांट टू यूज द प्राइवेट रजिस्ट्री, तो उसका थोड़ा अलग ये है कॉन्फ़िगरेशन, व्हिच आई विल क्विकली शो यू दैट एज वेल. प्राइवेट रजिस्ट्री के इमेजेस कैसे यूज होता है. pull an image from a private registry. Just follow this. You'll need to create a secret for your Docker registry, private registry, and just give that credential into your pod YAML file. Image pull secrets. It will use that secret to pull the image from your private registry. That's not topic of this discussion for this session, but just to give you additional information how to pull the image from private registry. Coming back to your question, whether you should use the local or the Docker Hub registry. Local registry, because if your image is the size is very big, it will take some time to pull that image. And as per the sequence of this, local registry पे वो check करता है, right? So local registry पे अगर होता है image, अगेन आप जब डॉकर हब पे भी इमेज यूज करते हो डॉकर हब से, इट इज गोइंग टू पुल दैट इमेज लोकली. फर्स्ट ये लोकल पे पुल करेगा एंड देन इट विल यूज दैट इमेज to create your pod. Okay, so if you check the description again here, what it did, it pulled the image from Docker Hub because the image was not present locally. It will pull the image from Docker Hub and then it will create. So whether you mention it or not, it is going to check a Docker registry images first. And if it is not present, Docker registry Docker Hub पे check करेगा. Docker registry पे नहीं मिला, then it will give you error image pull. Clear? किसी को कुछ डाउट है? Okay, great. Correct. We pass it as a secrets. We yeah, that secret part is remaining, वो अलग सेशन में कवर करेंगे. But Kubernetes secrets use करते हैं for providing the credentials for private registry. Okay, now coming back to our next topic. Okay, so you can check the logs using kubectl logs command, and if you do the -if, all these options you can try it out. Okay, I skip this. This is how actually Kubernetes maintains the logs of your containers and the pods. So Kubernetes container runtime handles and redirects any output generated to a containerized application to a standard output and standard error streams. Different container runtimes are available. By default, if container restarts, the kubelet keeps one terminated container with its logs. If a pod is evicted from a node, all corresponding containers are also evicted along with their logs. जब आपको पता है ये वाला डायग्राम से अभी क्लियर हुआ होगा कि पॉड के अंदर कंटेनर होता है, कंटेनर के अंदर एप्लीकेशन होता है. इफ कंटेनर गेट्स डिलीटेड और so Kubernetes will keep the log of the one last container and its logs. Plus if the pod gets deleted तो उसके साथ उसके कंटेनर भी चला जाएगा और उसके logs भी चला जाएगा. So the best practice is you should have some external logging which will keep the historical logs. If you want to check the logs of the uh, pod or the container which got deleted 2-3 months back, then you should be able to see it. So external logging आपको use करना पड़ेगा. Okay. ये हुआ logging वाला part, debugging वाला part. Now we are going to cover the monitoring in Kubernetes. And why do we need monitoring? So system component metrics can give a better look into what is happening inside them. For example, node level metrics or the pod level metrics. हमारा Kubernetes cluster या अभी तो single node है, that is fine. We can check the logs simply. But when we are discussing about the production level Kubernetes, तो उस time पे बहुत ज़्यादा nodes होते हैं और हमें we want to look what is happening actually with those nodes, how much memory they are consuming, how many parts are getting scheduled on the nodes, how much CPU they are consuming, how much CPU or the memory is consumed by the pods. ये सब कुछ हमें पता होना चाहिए. Then we can improve our application better, right? Or we can assign the pods whenever required. Metrics are particularly useful for building dashboards and alerts as well. जो हम मैट्रिक्स अभी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, दिस पॉड लेवल मैट्रिक्स, सीपीयू, मेमोरी, डिस्क, the number of pods, number of healthy parts or the number of unhealthy parts, ये सारे metrics to measure the performance of your Kubernetes applications and of your Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so there are multiple things which you can actually use for Kubernetes cluster monitoring and its application monitoring. Kubernetes provides a metric server component, which can help you to check the node metrics and the pod metrics. So first thing first, I'm going to show you how to install this metric server into your Kubernetes cluster. Metric server Kubernetes. Okay, this project is available. It's an open source project. Metric server is scalable, efficient source of container resource metrics for in Kubernetes. Metric server collects a resource metrics from kubelets and expose them in a Kubernetes API server through metrics API. And if you want to use these commands called kubectl top node or kubectl top pod, then you will need to have a metric server installed in your Kubernetes cluster. Okay. In Yeah. So what's the usage of this? It will give you the CPU memory for your pods, CPU memory for nodes, which can help you to see which node or the pod is consuming more memory or the CPU. So how to install this? You need to run this one command, kubectl apply -f, and this components file has everything required for metric server installation. Okay, so it is going to install everything required for metric server installation: service account, role binding, deployment services, okay, API service, everything. So we just need to run that command and it will install the metric server in our Kubernetes cluster. I'm going to share this command or the document itself so that you guys can read more about it. Okay, I might have installed before this session. Let me check kubectl apply करके देखते हैं. Metric server created. Okay, configured. It has created the service account, cluster roles, everything it has created which is required for my metric server. I didn't need to do anything. Okay, so this is a one way. If you want to install the HA metric server, then follow this. There is Helmchat as well. You can use that for installing the metric server. Once this is available, you can run this command called kubectl top nodes unavailable बोल रहा है क्या get nodes सर्विस अनअवेलेबल ठीक है चालू हो रहा होगा kubectl get pod कौन से नेम स्पेस में इंस्टॉल कर दिया इसने So it is going to install these components in kube system namespace. So let's say if our pods are running for this metric server, it's still not running. कुछ time लग रहा होगा. Tell me how I can check why it is not running. What is the command I'll need to run? Kubectl describe, correct. Kubectl describe will help me to check details about this pod and also the events. Not found. Metric server not found. Correct. Tell me why we are getting this error. It is saying the pod is available, metric server, you can see here, but it is still saying that pod not found due to namespace, correct. If we are not providing the namespace, it will be always default. And our pod metric server is running in kube system namespace. It is saying prof failed, still not available. So let's give some time for this metric server. Let's see if it runs. छोटा सा मिनी क्यूब क्लस्टर है बस तो उसमें मैंने बहुत कुछ ऑलरेडी इंस्टॉल करके रखा I can use the hyphen watch to check the status. Still showing not running. The status is running, but the container is not in ready state. Describe part. readiness probe field. It is checking this readiness probe to check whether this container is started or not, and it is failing for that. Oh, I didn't share you the link. Yeah, now it should be available for everyone. Still not running. Let me delete few of the things from here, clean up Nginx 2. Delete this minikube because वो पहले जो error आ रहा था API server, I installed something and that is causing this no the problem. This okay. Let's start this fresh minikube cluster. It is going to use the minikube Docker driver using Docker desktop driver. ठीक है. CPU 2 cores, memory 379 MB. It is creating the container for minikube. और फिर से हम प्रेस इंस्टॉल कर लेते हैं इसको मैट्रिक्स सर्वर इमेजेस I have to I have Docker desktop and the Rancher desktop. So it got confused when I started this Docker desktop. It's shifted it from I think from Rancher to Docker desktop. So let's use the Rancher only, जो भी अभी currently available है. It is preparing Kubernetes environment using this Docker version, and Kubernetes is 1.26. It will start the control plane, our back rules, everything is set up. Yeah, perfect. Now we have our Kubernetes. kubectl get nodes करके देखेंगे. One node is ready. If we run this command kubectl top node, which actually gives us a CPU and the memory usage for our Kubernetes nodes and the pods. It is saying Matrix API not available. So we are going to install this Matrix API server. So let's install this. Compatibilities, compatibility matrix v1 1.21 0 3.6. So ये वाला भी issue होता है कभी कभी, that you might be using metric server older version and your Kubernetes version is something else. So ये issue हो सकता है. So we need to make sure that we are using the perfect one. For 1.8 to 1.21, we should be using 0.3, but we want the latest. Okay, let's try this. एक बार try करते हैं, देखते हैं क्यों होता है कि नहीं. Because metric server का API version and the Kubernetes version needs to be supported. Delegate parts hyphen encrypt system. It's in creating state. अगर ये नहीं चलता, then it will be a problem of this compatibility issue. Content are creating, image pull हो रहा होगा. It is only supported till Kubernetes version 1.21. I think for latest version, we might need to use some different. थोड़ा वेट करके देखते हैं. Kubernetes metric server, why it's not running critical logs in system. Okay, ये बोल रहा है okay. Prof failed, no metrics to serve. 10250 cannot validate certificate because it doesn't contain any IP SAS. ये मिनी क्यूब का अलग इशू रहता है ना, नो मैट्रिक्स टू सर्व. फिर से kubectl टॉप नोड करके देखते हैं. Yeah, the server is currently unable to handle the request. Metric server is start नहीं हो रहा. Field to script mode 10250 metrics resources can't validate certificate. Get service system. Let me check once if we have any instructions specifically for minikube metric server. ये issue, I have installed it previously, metric server. It don't give us an error. Rely on kubectl version 1.19, Kubernetes 1.17. It's actually not giving us support for our latest versions. 1.26 हम यूज कर रहे हैं ना. But I have to show you the demo. What I'll do, kubectl delete this minikube, delete करते हैं, and we will start minikube with the version 1.21 और फिर ट्राई करते हैं. minikube start. version specify करने के लिए we have this option, Kubernetes version. Kubernetes version 1.21. No major, no good. 1.21 यूज नहीं कर सकते, कर सकते हैं. I'll provide you the steps for installing this metric server on the latest Kubernetes version. As you can see the compatibility matrix here, the latest version of the this metric server is available till Kubernetes 1.21. उसी को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. उसके बाद वाले Kubernetes के लिए कुछ अलग स्टेप होगा. That I'll check and tell you after this session. But to show you the demo, what I'm doing, I'm creating the, restarting my minikube with the older version 1.21, and here, as per their compatibility matrix, this matrix server should be able to install. No, no, there are ऐसे issues. You should use a minikube. इससे और भी मजा आता है. मतलब issues आते हैं, issues solve करने में मजा आता है. Yeah, sure. If you have any questions, you can ask. No, stick to the topic. ETCD के बारे में क्या आपको जानना है? Restore and backup. That question is in your wanted your should be configured on all nodes. You wanted to know how to configure etcd on all nodes. Okay, etcd HA का document check करो. etcd high availability. Set up HA etcd cluster with Kubernetes. This will help you. ये वाला डॉक्यूमेंट फिल करो. Yes, that's a very good statement. With kubectl is just for interacting with your Kubernetes cluster. kubectl doesn't create a etcd. kubeadm, I think you're talking about the kubeadm will create a etcd, but if you have HA etcd cluster, then just follow this one. Okay, so by default, it will create one local etcd instance on each control plane node. It is also possible to treat the etcd cluster as external and provision a etcd instance on separate host. If you want to reduce the load on your control plane node, then you can set up the external HA etcd cluster and use it. So for that, I'm telling you these steps. If you want to send logs to persistent volume, then do we need to add in deployment or another file? Send the logs of the pod to persistent volume, which means you want to store it somewhere. Okay. There are many things which you can do, but the one thing which we already seen during our pod class, so you need to use this log rotator or which will logging वाला एक section था ना? Okay, log rotator. So basically, your container keeps on sending these logs to standard output and error, and your Kubernetes maintains, as we discussed, maintains a log of the recent container and its log into file. So you need to read those logs. Maybe you can keep इसके अलग-अलग architectures है how you can implement it. That you can have a log agent which will keep on reading these files and send it to backend logs. और you can use the sidecar container जो starting में हमने एक discussion किया था init containers, sidecar containers. So those sidecar containers will push the logs to your external agent as well. Collect the logs of the container and also send it to the logging agent. Think this one will clear your doubt how to use the sidecar container. So see, this is our main container called count, and what we are doing, it's writing some logs, application logs into one of the file, which and we are also mounting the same log volume to another container. Varlog. So this way you can have the logs into one of the volume, and that volume you can mount it to external storage, or you can use the empty directory. This will be just for a sharing between log sharing, but ideally you should use some external tools called Fluent Beat or ELK stack for monitoring and logging, for logging particularly. Okay, our cluster is ready. मिनीक्यूब देखते हैं मिनीक्यूब का वर्जन क्या है मिनीक्यूब वर्जन 1.30 and Kubernetes version. Let's try to apply this metric server. अगर इस बार नहीं चला ना तो फिर बड़ा प्रॉब्लम होगा. kubectl get pods -n kube system. Describe pod server pulling image pull करने दो. Running, I think it's a similar issue. बट अभी हेल्थ चेक प्रोब का इशू नहीं दे रहा है ना. Settle logs of these containers of this pod, and okay, it is giving an error, failed probe metric storage ready, no metrics to serve. It is trying to use a certificate which are invalid, and this will not work for this version as well. So I'll need to show this demo again. I'll try it out. But this is not what we will be using for monitoring. What we are going to do, I'll park this one metric server. It is just a idea, but we'll try this out again in one of the other session. So this is for a local development. If you have a production environment, you should configure the Prometheus server, which is a open source tool, or some other metric scraper to periodically gather these metrics and make them available in some kind of time series database. Metric server नहीं चला कोई बात नहीं. We are going to see the demo of Prometheus and Grafana. Okay, so monitoring Kubernetes cluster is as much important as deploying application in Kubernetes, because you should know what is happening with your application, how Kubernetes cluster and pods and the deployments, how they are performing, and these tools, monitoring tools, which will help you to actually see the performance of your application. When it comes to monitoring, Prometheus and the Grafana are popular tools. Prometheus is an open source monitoring tool which will collect and store metrics data into Grafana. Not in Grafana, sorry. Prometheus is an open source monitoring tool which collects and stores the metrics. It is same as a metric server, but metric server to abhi nahi chala. We are going to see the later part of the demo, which is the Prometheus to collect the metrics of the Kubernetes cluster and offer Kubernetes resources. Grafana is a visualization tool. जो भी metric आ रहे, those will be. I'll show you the format of those metrics, but those are not will be helpful if someone is from a non-technical or from a technical background. So to help them, we should be have charts and the graphs which will help them to visualize the data collected by the Prometheus about the cluster and the resources of the um, Kubernetes cluster. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll quickly install this Prometheus and the Grafana. Steps are simple. We are going to use the help charts so that we don't suffer like installing this metric server. Wasted a lot of time. We learned the debugging part, but finally it did not get installed. So I installed this. First, I set up the repository where my Prometheus chart is available. After that, I installed my M chart for the Prometheus. It is publicly available. It's open source. We are going to use it. Once that is done, I'm going to expose the services. Let's check whether our Prometheus is ready. Prometheus pods and services are ready. The containers are starting. इसको थोड़ा time लगेगा, but let it be. But okay. So to access this Prometheus, we will expose this service using a menu queue. It takes time. Once our containers and the pods are ready for Prometheus, it will load the dashboard for Prometheus. So once after that, I'll show you how the Prometheus looks like. Fine. I'll keep this terminal open and open the new one. And we will install the Grafana as well. So first step is to add the repository for a Grafana. We'll install the Grafana, which is a visualization and visualization tool. It will install everything which is required for a Grafana. A metric server couldn't get resource list for metric, currently unable to handle the request. ये metric server का issue आ रहा है. Fine, but that will not impact for a Grafana installation. कोई problem नहीं है हमें. Now, what are the resources required for a Grafana? This Helm chart has already installed. We will need one secret for a Grafana. Okay, this is a secret. Grafana का dashboard आता है, उसको login करने के लिए we'll need this. Then I'm going to expose this service. Service is exposed. We have the secret. And I'll open this terminal, expose this service for a minikube as well. Okay. So, ठीक है. It will open the terminal for the Grafana. ये चालू हुआ कि नहीं? Yeah. This is how Prometheus looks like, and you will see it has started collecting metrics about your Kubernetes, config info, and it will show the metrics about your Kubernetes. Okay, cube. If I do the cube, ये metric का नाम है, and each metric has its type: counter metric, gauge metric. So if you want to see the information about our node, so there is a metric called cube node info. It will have all the values and the labels, values and the labels. So you can see here, the it is collecting the labels for this metric and details about the node. So the node name is Minikube. Operating system for this node is a Ubuntu, pod CIDR, service, system UID, kernel version. Everything about the node is getting collected here in one metric. If you want to see the graphs, those graphs are also available in Prometheus, but the problem is those are not, the UI is not that much great as compared to Grafana. Grafana का dashboard देखे you will feel good, nice. ये क्या हुआ? Okay, मैंने क्यों सर्विस Grafana ठीक है कुछ क्यों सर्विस Grafana URL. It's not a link. We'll copy this one URL. This is a URL for your Grafana, and this is the dashboard for your Grafana. It's a visualization. ये तो इनका now we want to log in into this Grafana. तो एक by default user admin user मिलता है आपको, and the password is here. How did I get the password? Using the command. ये जब आप हेल्मचार्ट इंस्टॉल करते हो, इंस्टॉल होने के बाद आपको एक कमांड मिलता है टू गेट द सीक्रेट फॉर योर एडमिन यूजर. So I got the password here. I am logged in using this password, and here you can see you can create a dashboard. Just give me one moment. Okay, so this is my Grafana, and here I can create a dashboard. Dashboard create करने के लिए you can start from scratch with a new dashboard. I'm going to import one dashboard, and if you go to the Grafana site dashboards, you will see here some of the dashboard shared by other people, community, publicly available, which you can use for your usage. ठीक है? So I'm going to use one of these 6417 करके कुछ ID है, which is a Kubernetes dashboard. No data source found. Correct. So two metrics are coming into your Prometheus, and we want them to be coming visualizing on the Grafana. For that, we will need to do data source configuration. Okay, so we are going to see the data source, which means from where we want to collect this data. So the data source is Prometheus. We will use the HTTP URL of the Prometheus. Prometheus np:80. Let's check if it is working. What's the name of the Prometheus server? Prometheus server np नाम है ना, and it is available on port 80. Since the service is node port type, yeah, we can access the service using its name. Service is node port, and we can access the port, the service on port 80. So this is a URL for your Prometheus. Now we have the Prometheus server here, data source added. We can create a dashboard, import the dashboard, provide the ID of the dashboard 6417. You can search these IDs on this link. यहाँ पे जाओ and you can use it. Search. Okay. I'm using 6417, which is also Kubernetes cluster dashboard. 6417. अलग अलग है डैशबोर्ड पब्लिकली अवेलेबल. सो वंस यू इंपोर्ट ये पूरा का पूरा डैशबोर्ड आपको मिल जाएगा. इधर यू कैन इंपोर्ट इट और यू कैन स्टार्ट इट फ्रॉम स्क्रैच. नाउ you can see here some of the details about our Kubernetes clusters are already coming. Since this is a very older dashboard, the metrics names have changed. So we need to fix these issues. What I'm going to do, I'll use my, let's try it out. I have fixed some of these issues. So I'm going to change this text box to query type, and we are going to get the name of the nodes using the labels. Okay. If we do the label values here in our Prometheus, label values, for cube node labels, you will see this metric coming. Okay, we want this label to be used, node name, and it will provide us a name of the available nodes. So I'll see the drop down, and drop down में मुझे select करने के लिए मिल जाएगा. So this is one thing which we have fixed now. What I'm going to do, I'll go back to the dashboard, and you can see the available nodes available here in this drop down, and I can select one of these nodes. अगर आपका multi-node Kubernetes cluster होगा, that will come, all the nodes will come here in a drop down. Similarly, the namespace is a text box, which means I can add anything and it will try to find out. But it's a random name nahi chahiye hame. What we are going to do, we are replace this text box with a query. Okay. Query type, we are going to use a label values, and namespace label jo bhi hoga, only those labels we want to be available in a drop down. So these are the namespaces available, correct? So these we will see. Okay, so all namespaces automatically come here. Now you can see this deployment replicas, deployments, how many deployments are unavailable, metric server, all this information are coming, node level metrics. And if you see this first widget, cluster pod usage, it is showing NA, which means the information is not coming. For these as well, CPU usage, cluster CPU usage is not coming. This is why, because let's try to debug this one. It's not part of your security, just I'm giving you more information how to debug this kind of issue. So let's try to search if this metric is available or not in Prometheus. Okay. When I search for this, it is saying empty query result, and which means mainly because this matrix is not available. So the names of the metrics have been changed. The new name for this metric is a kubepod container resource request, and if you want to filter it out, you will need to provide the correct name. Okay. So here we wanted to use the CPU course, request CPU course. Yeah, I'm going to filter it out, and the unit is course 4. Okay. This way you can filter the metrics which are available. So provide the correct name of your metric in the dashboard if you want to see the visualization. So I'll change this unit to core, change the name and change the this thing. Okay. Now अभी हमें कुछ metric दिखना चाहिए. Yeah. Now you can see the details are coming for this one, for this widget. Similarly, ये बाकी के widget में भी कुछ छोटा मोटा problem होगा. Just try to fix it. Containers running, waiting, terminated, all this information are coming. Let's try to put some of the pods into other state and let's see if our dashboard shows the information for us or not. हमने Nginx वाला किया था, so we'll use the Nginx example. Or anyone, कुछ भी चलेगा. Let's try it out. vi v1.yaml Nginx. Let's put this pod into non-running state. Install it, kubectl git pods. All pods are in running state. Kubectl apply -f and let's create this pod. It's in container creating. ठीक. Let's see हमें यहाँ पे ये change दिखता है कि नहीं. कौन सा namespace select किया है हमने अभी. We have selected the kube system. We want default namespace status. ठीक है. Containers running are 7, pods running are 6. Let's verify it. कितने pods running है अभी. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Should reflect soon. Mirror image pull back off. So these are running pods, correct hai? We have 6 pods which are in running state and 1 pod is in pending state, correct? So it is showing correctly information. 6 pod है, 6 pod running state में and 1 is in error image pullback off. How it gets this information? If you check the metrics which is used here to filter out, what we are doing, we are checking this metric cube pod status phase and checking the metrics from namespace जो भी हमने select किया यहाँ पे default. The phase is pending or it can be in any other state. Correct. If it is, if you don't want pending running state, then we are putting it here pending. You can also put other states of the pods, no worries, and it will show you the correct information. For us, it is showing. This is not a good looking dashboard, but you can customize it always and create a meaningful dashboard, which will give the information about your Kubernetes cluster. Now you will ask why do we need this setup, Prometheus Grafana setup? You can see एक single cluster के लिए you can go and check this run this command and get the information. But when you are working in a production environment, there will be multiple Kubernetes cluster. You don't need to go into those cluster and one by one check what is happening with your node or the pod. You should be able to see it from one location, and that's where this Prometheus and Grafana helps us to see everything what is happening into your multiple clusters on one single dashboard. So follow this tutorial and set up a Prometheus Grafana for your Kubernetes cluster. Some of the things you will need to fix out, just like I showed you, how did I fix the cluster CPU usage widget. Similarly, you can fix others as well. So this metric will not be available, looks like. So what you need to do, just go to your Prometheus, search for whether this metric is available or not. Yes, it is available. This one is available. Resource matrix. अभी इसका नाम change हो गया. So similarly, you will need to filter the results for memory using a byte. So this thing we can apply here as well. So we'll change the metric name and unit. Memory चाहिए तो memory का byte unit है. So we are going to change that. Unit is byte. Okay. Now we should be able to see some metrics for our Kubernetes cluster. Correct. CPU memory usage दिख रहा है. Similarly for disk also you can fix it. Disk के लिए क्या बोल रहा है ये? Node file system size and file system free. देखते हैं कि ये वाला metric है कि नहीं. No, there is no result for this, which means definitely ये available नहीं है. File system available in bytes करके एक metric है. So we need to change this name to the correct name. Available bytes और भी कुछ है क्या? File system avail bytes, files free bytes and size in bytes. Okay, तो हमें ये चेंज करना पड़ेगा मेट्रिक का नेम टू bytes free_bytes size in bytes. Okay, so ये अभी चल जाएगा. Still no. देखते हैं इसको अभी. This one is correct. फ्री बाइट्स करके कोई मेट्रिक है क्या, वो चेक करो. This one is also correct. Then let's say कि ये लेबल अवेलेबल है क्या, नोड नेम करके. Do we have this available? Label check करते हैं. Node, the label is node, it's not node name. Okay, so let's change this node and देखते हैं कि हमें widget मिलता है क्या. Yeah, now you can see the metric is coming. This will show the disk usage of your Kubernetes cluster. ऐसे आपको either you can start from scratch or you can import the dashboard and fix the issue. Since this dashboard was created very long back, I think some of the metric names were used that time are there in this and update नहीं हुआ है अभी. ये dashboard जो भी हम use किया था 6417. Okay, but कोई नहीं, you can change the dashboard widgets and the metric names and the labels as per the metrics and the labels coming into your Prometheus, and you can edit it. Datadog is similar, but Datadog is not free. Datadog only allows you free 14 days trial period. Prometheus and Grafana is open source. You can use it for longer time, as much as you want. Okay. But the issue with the Prometheus Grafana, you will also need to manage its administration. You'll need to make sure that these dashboards are persistent in your Kubernetes cluster, and Prometheus data is also persistent. Otherwise, you will create a dashboard, but once your Grafana or the Prometheus pods get crashed, you'll lose the entire data, which you don't want. When you go for the both depends on उनका budget कितना है. Based on the budget they will select. Some companies use the Datadog because they don't want headache of managing the Kubernetes and the Prometheus. They prefer the enterprise solution like a Datadog, New Relic, or some Dynatrace वगैरह use करते हैं. कुछ कंपनीज को बजट नहीं होता, then they go for the Prometheus graph. Okay, that was about your Prometheus grafana setup. I'll just check it out, try करो. The last one from this session is Kubernetes props. So this little theory, more theory and एक example देखेंगे. Metric server में देखा हमने, the pod was showing running state, but वो container not ready state में था. So how exactly happening all these things? और हमने कुछ health prop का issue भी देखा है यहाँ पे. It was showing कि the health prop failed. I think the log, this history I deleted. Okay. हेल्थ प्रॉप फेल्ड हो रहा था. व्हाट इज इट? हेल्थ प्रॉप क्या होता है? हेल्थ चेक्स और द प्रॉप्स क्या होता है? इन Kubernetes each pod has a pod status which not only contains a pod phase. एक कोई तो स्टेटस रहेगा pod का, पेंडिंग, रनिंग, सक्सीडेड, फेल्ड और अननोन. ये हमने स्टेटस देखा अभी. इट कैन बी इन पेंडिंग स्टेट, रनिंग स्टेट, सक्सीडेड, फेल्ड या फिर अननोन स्टेट. And pod goes into multiple conditions as well, multiple phases. Pod, the containers might be in creating state, containers are in ready state, or pod is getting scheduled. So ये कुछ theory है which just to explain you the status of the pod and the conditions of the pod. So based on this status and the conditions help us to understand which phase our pod is in current state. Okay, so this pod conditions you can check pod schedule, which means ये पहले आता है that node has been successfully selected to schedule the pod. When we schedule any pod, it gets scheduled on particular pod. जैसे हमारे Nginx के केस में वो minikube वाला आ रहा था. Okay, pod has been scheduled for a minikube node. And then it will go into initializing state if there are any init containers available. If all the containers are in a ready state, then it will mark the pod as a ready state, and more things. Similarly, आपके container का भी state रहता है. It can be in waiting state, running state, or the terminator state. So what these props actually help us to determine the state of your container, whether it is healthy to serve the traffic or it is not to handle the traffic. Okay. So there are multiple ways to check this. You can execute the action inside the Kubernetes container. You will run some command. If you get some proper expected output from the container, then you will say कि okay ठीक है ये container अभी चल रहा है and I can send the request to this container. Otherwise, if you have a web application or if you have a TCP port running for your application, you can use the TCP socket action or the HTTP GET action. You will send a HTTP request to your container. If you get a successful response, you will consider that container is in healthy state or a ready state to serve the traffic. Similarly, you can use the TCP socket action to check whether the port is open, mostly used for endpoints that are not talking to HTTP. अगर HTTP endpoint नहीं होगा, then हमारा container को हम एक port दे देते हैं. So you can check that port whether it is listening on that port or not to make sure your container is healthy or in ready state. So Kubernetes allows us to set up a props, different props के types रहते हैं, which are health checks that can monitor a container status. They are basically the containers equivalent of the dead man switch to make sure only healthy pods serve the traffic. We have seen कि deployment में deployment creates multiple pods and pod के अंदर multiple containers हो सकते हैं. So how do we actually know कि ये जो container बन रहे हैं pod के अंदर, those are actually available to handle the request or not. We can't go and check the status every time, correct? And log in into the pod and check the status or the health of the application which is running inside a container. We need some kind of logic or some kind of resource which can help us to detect it automatically. So Kubelet can periodically run an action such as HTTP GET request, or it can also run command inside a container, and based on that result we can mark the pod or the container as in ready or a not ready state. So इसमें तीन टाइप्स रहते हैं, startup props, liveness prop and the readiness prop. We are going to see all three. Startup props are actually the props which helps us to check whether our container is started or not. If your process requires time to get ready, reading a file, passing a large configuration, preparing some data, so that if that is the case, then you can use the startup props. If the prop fails, the threshold is exceeded, it will be restarted so the operation can start over. You need to adjust initial delay seconds and the pre-second. That is fine. We'll see that in detail. But just imagine करो that you have an application जिसको start होने में ही time लग रहा है. स्टार्ट होने के लिए 10 मिनट्स लग रहे हैं, एंड यू हैव टू वेट फॉर दैट मच टाइम फॉर योर एप्लीकेशन टू स्टार्ट. So how you'll know कि this time has been passed, and after that particular time your container should definitely start. So you can use the startup prop in that case. Yeah, Splunk is also monitoring tool here. You can use the Splunk as well. I think you asked how did we connect this monitoring tool which our cluster. Any configuration setting is there. No, you don't need to configure it externally. Prometheus listens to /metrics endpoint, and it collects those metrics for you. Since we have deployed this Prometheus and Grafana in our Kubernetes cluster, it will automatically, Prometheus will collect the metrics from your Kubernetes cluster, and Prometheus और Grafana का हमने configuration देखा. We created this data source, save dashboard. Data source में we pass on the link of this Prometheus. Okay, this is a link of Prometheus. एंड जब भी हमने डैशबोर्ड में यूज किया है, इफ आई गो टू द डैशबोर्ड, दिस इज आवर डैशबोर्ड. ये डैशबोर्ड है. सो इफ यू go to the widget, here you will see the option to select the data source, Prometheus data source, and from that Prometheus data source we are querying to that Prometheus data source to get this metric, and filtering out the data which required for us to showcase on this widget. Clear? Metric server we did not install. I'll show you the not metrics slash metrics endpoint. Prometheus architecture. Diagram मुझे ऐड करना था, but I thought it will be too much. Prometheus architecture. Okay. So this is the architecture for your Prometheus server. It finds the targets. Service discovery automatically कर देता है when you have this Prometheus installed in your Kubernetes cluster. So if you go to here, service discovery, it has discovered these targets and the services Kubernetes API server automatically. Well, since it is running in your Kubernetes cluster, it also configured the targets here. It is listening to this endpoint slash metrics to collect the metrics from your API server. It will talk to your API server to collect the metrics collected by it, and then it will send all those metrics. It will store into some databases, storage, maybe persistent volume you can have, and from Grafana using a PromQL query, ये जो हम query run कर रहे हैं, PromQL, using a PromQL query, we can query to the Prometheus server. It will talk to the storage which it has, and it will send those metrics to the Grafana. Okay, so there are multiple things. If it automatically does the service discovery for your Kubernetes cluster, find out all those metrics required, and store it, and then we can use those into your Kubernetes Grafana. Okay. Okay, let's get back to the props part. It is very much important. So a started prop checks if the container has properly started. It has higher priority over the two other prop types, जो बाद में देखने वाले liveness prop and the readiness prop. First of all, if you have the readiness and the liveness prop, it always checks for the startup prop first. Startup props are useful in situation where your app can take a long time to start or could occasionally fail on the startup. So pehle it will wait for some time. It will wait for your container to start, and once it is started, then it will mark your container as ready to serve the traffic. So that is the startup prop. And otherwise, you don't want that. You are very sure to start up your containers. So with the start that your container is started. For that, you will use the props. Either you can use the HTTP method, you can use a TCP action, or you can run some command using a exec action. You'll see that. The second prop is a readiness prop. A readiness prop checks if a container can respond to a new request. Unlike a liveness prop, a readiness prop doesn't kill the container, which means um, that is the main difference. कि liveness prop में it kills the container and it restarts the container uh, to make sure it is live. Or in readiness case, it will not kill the container. It will wait for it. Okay, so Kubernetes simply hides those containers or contains pod from corresponding services so that no traffic is redirected to it. As an example, a web service that occasionally runs a large, expensive job might slow down. So we would want our readiness prop to check if such an operation is in progress. Okay, so containers are in ready state, but those are still not able to perform as much as required. The capability of those containers is not up to the mark. So, but how do you will check whether your container is ready to respond to a new request or whether it can handle the traffic or not? So in that case, you can remove those containers or the pods temporarily out of the service. ये service का हमने discussion किया था कि service groups pods, and if you know that some of the pods need time to serve the traffic, that time you can remove those pods from service discovery. Okay. And then what is a readiness prop then? Sorry, liveness prop, readiness prop हमने अभी देखा. So liveness prop detects if a container is properly running and if the failure threshold has been reached, kills the container. In most cases, depending on the container's restart policy, Kubernetes will automatically restart the failed container. We might want to use the liveness for a container that can fail with no possible recovery. तो ऐसे कभी केस हो सकता है that you have your application and it is live, but it is not able to do its actual operation. and in that case you want to restart the failed container. You want to have the restart of the container. Automatically it is not getting restarted. So in that case you can use the liveness prop. If it you can check the you can use the commands to execute inside a container, and if it is continuously failing for some time, you can restart that container automatically. And readiness prop के केस में क्या करोगे, you will use it when you don't want your container to be restarted. You know that it might be not performing up to the mark because of the some issue. It might be has slowed down, but it is still working. It is in ready state. So you will use the readiness props in that case. Okay, so your few fields you can configure for the props. All these three props. You can use the initial delay seconds to actually check. Um, Actually checking the props, you can add the initial delay seconds. You can use the period seconds to wait for that much time between the two checks. You can use the timeout seconds, successful threshold and the failure threshold. So as we discussed कि हमें ये जो liveness prob और readiness prob fail कब मानना है, that will be decided by the successful threshold and the failure threshold. If it is failing continuously for 3 times, readiness probe failed हो रहा है, then you can mark that as a readiness probe failed. If it is successful for 1 time as well, you can mark it as a successful. Okay, so I have one this example which actually wanted to try it out. Okay, so here what I did, I have created this liveness prop. Liveness prop will be part of your container section. Here what we are doing, which we have this one endpoint जो हमने uncomment किया था. So I'm going to remove this section. We are going to build this image again. We have this one endpoint called healthy, which is actually giving us a response, okay or not okay. Okay, the health of our application. Okay, so we are going to hit that endpoint inside a container slash healthy, and if we get a successful output, which means our container is in ready, it is available to handle the request, and if it is gives us a error, which means it is not able to handle the load. Correct. So all these things, initial delay seconds, we will wait for 5 seconds before actually trying out this endpoint, healthy endpoint. Period seconds, how much time we should be wait for the next period check. Similarly, you can add the um, success threshold and the failure threshold. That is fine. What we are going to do, we will build our image again. Docker images. ठीक है, हम इसको बिल्ड करते हैं इमेज को. docker build -t demo app. Is my screen visible to you, Mary? Working fine. Okay. Okay, this image is ready. We are going to tag it and push it. So this image we want to tag, and to push it to our registry, we will add a new tag to this one. Demo app. Now push this registry Docker hub, and ये same image we will use in our deployment. I'm going to replace this one. So in short, if I tell you कि ये props का usage क्या है, to check the health of your application, whether it is live, whether it is ready. Live मतलब आपका container start होगा, but it is still not performing. Okay, that is liveness prop, just to check whether your container is in ready state or not. Sometimes what will happen that your container is in running state, but the actual which is running inside it is not performing. In that case, to check those kind of scenarios, you need to use a readiness prop. So for example, आपका Nginx है एप्लीकेशन, यू हैव Nginx एप्लीकेशन, तो Nginx का pod आपको रेडी स्टेट में दिखा रहा है, योर कंटेनर इज इन रेडी स्टेट 1 out of 1 kubectl get pods में दिखा रहा है, but Nginx is returning you the output when you are calling it is returning 503 status code, which is a server unavailable, करेक्ट, यही है ना, या फिर 400 या फिर 404 ऐसे कुछ स्टेटस कोड दिखा रहा है, विच मीन्स Nginx का कंटेनर तो रनिंग है, बट इट इज नॉट गिविंग यू द प्रॉपर आउटपुट विच यू आर एक्सपेक्टिंग. So that is where the readiness probe will come into picture. कि आपका application running है, but it is not giving you the expected output. Okay, this is done. We have changed it. Now we are going to deploy our application here. kubectl apply -f apply top से कर सकते हैं. Yeah, service and the deployment is created. kubectl git अगर करता हूँ मैं, you can see web app deployment is here. कोई मुझे बताएगा command to reduce the number of replicas directly using some command? This is one of the question I think from your CKD, how to reduce the number of replicas of your. अभी five replicas हमने pod के बनाए we want, but if you want to reduce this, you can use the kubectl scale command, kubectl scale deploy -1 replica is equal to 1 non replicas. So you can use this command to automatically scale down your number of pods. Not automatically, they're using a command, we are setting it. Okay, so kubectl scale deploy web app deployment -1 replicas is equal to 1. So अभी ये web app deployment का एक part running है. Let's say kubectl describe pod web app deployment, and you can see here एक नया prop liveness prop add हुआ होगा, liveness prop here. What it is doing, it is using a HTTP GET. It is sending a HTTP GET request to the healthy endpoint. It is delaying it by 5 seconds, initial delay seconds, timeout after 1 second, period is 5 seconds, the period between the next check is a 5 second. If it is successful for one time, it will mark this pod as container as a live, and if it fails for 3 times, it will mark it as a failure. Okay, you can see here it got failed for one time and the status code was 500, but when it is succeeded, it marked the pod as a this as a healthy state, and our pod is in running state. So that's how you can check the status of your health of your containers running inside a pod. ये हो गया liveness prop का पार्ट. Similarly, readiness prop और आपका ये जो है startup prop, उसका definition भी सेम ही है. Declaration, not definition. Definitions are different, but configuration way is the same. Okay, this is one more example. यहाँ पे हम क्या कर रहे हैं? We have this liveness execute pod. So it is going to be sleep after 600 seconds. We are using a liveness prop to check whether this container is live or not using a liveness prop. For our example, we use the HTTP, but you can also use the commands, which this command will get executed inside this container to check whether this container is running or not. Okay. Similarly, HTTP GET request वाला अभी हमने example देखा. You can use the HTTP GET to hit the endpoint inside a container. If it returns 200, then it will mark as a successful. If you get any other response, it will mark as a failed status. Yes, readiness probe का भी आप यहाँ पे देखोगे. It's a same thing. Container के section में you will need to add one more section called readiness, and you can use the same configuration. That's about the prop. So if we see the documentation as well, एक question आपको CKD में आएगा to configure the props for your container. The kubelet uses liveness props to know when to restart a container. For example, liveness prop could match a deadlock where an application is running but unable to make progress. Restarting a container in such a state can help to make the application more available despite the bugs. Okay. So there is a situation where your application is in running state, but it has hung and it needs a restart. And kubelet is not able to restart because the container is in running state, but it has to be restarted. So that's where you can use the liveness prop to make sure that if the container is running, but it is not working as expected, it needs a restart, you can use the liveness prop. In some cases, the kubelet uses a readiness prop to know when a container is in running ready to start accepting a traffic. A pod is considered ready when all of its containers are ready. On use of this signal is to control which pods are used as a backends for a services. When a pod is in not ready state, it is removed from a service load balancer. So if you have such kind of pods which takes some time and you don't want to redirect the traffic to those pods immediately, then you can use a readiness prop to make sure those pods get ready before you start sending a traffic to those pods. So, yeah, just try it out all these options. Readiness prop, liveness prop. It's a very important question for your Kubernetes exam as well. Okay, that's it for today. Please try it out the setup for Prometheus Grafana and also the this health check props. Metric server I'll check as we discuss. ये अभी latest version को support नहीं कर रहा. I'll need to check कि ये latest version Kubernetes में कैसे चलाएंगे. Did you enjoy this session? Just cheer me up as well sometimes because it takes a lot of time to curate this content which will help my students or the learners. So sometimes I'll also need boost up from you guys. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, that's the end of the session. But if you have not registered, um, I have launched I'm launching the second batch of my this DevOps. You can register for it if you are interested to learn everything from scratch. वहाँ पे थोड़ा ज़्यादा time मिलता है to interact with my student, but that's a different thing. It's a paid batch, so I don't wanted to talk about it here. But since you guys are attending these sessions. This is for particularly for CKD, but in this beginners batch too, I'm going to cover everything from scratch. We are going to see Linux, shell scripting, Python, a little bit about the cloud computing, not little, everything on the cloud ही होने वाला है पूरा demo. Everything about the Docker, Kubernetes, Helm. अगर time मिले तो Argo CD भी cover करेंगे, which is a very important tool in when you are working in a production environment. Jenkins, Ansible, Terraform, Prometheus, Grafana, and ELK. अभी तो I just only show you this configuration, but Prometheus itself is a uh, very wide topic to discuss when it comes to the learning. So in our class, we will see that in much more detail, Grafana, ELK, everything. And I have selected some of the topics, the projects which I'm going to cover in DevOps Batch 2. If you're interested, just go through it. Uh, Depends on, I check the latest JDs and what's the current market is demanding. Based on that, um, I'm thinking to cover all these projects. There will be much more many projects during these sessions in a DevOps batch too. I'll get some more time to share the knowledge about these tools and do some practicals with you guys. Okay. So if you or any of your friend is interested, just help them to register. Don't look at this price. I care a lot about my students, and I have made sure that the price for my this wonderful course is as as much as small I can keep. I have kept it, and this is a perfect course, if you ask me, for a beginners or a advanced people as well. Because if you check any random DevOps course on internet, it will be 50,000, 1 lakh. I say prices say just because the name and the brand they have. I I'm still building a brand. Even if I make a brand out of this, I'll not make you know monetize it for just high prices. So I'm going giving a discount of 75% off, and the price is 3,000 around. And this is a minimal price I am charging because it takes a lot of efforts for finding out this content, and also the timing also matters. If I if I don't charge anything, then लोग आपको पता है कि कितने लोग अटेंड करते हैं seriously sections. That is another topic to discuss, but yeah, it's just for valuing for my time and the efforts I'm putting. I'm charging little amount for my course, and there is no force to join. Yeah, I'm going to continue this free series. If you're interested, then you can join. Otherwise, no. Okay. Yeah. So the I think the batch will start on 29th July. It will be a weekend batch, and the sessions will be on weekends for 2 or 3 hours. There will be assignment, project, a lot of things we are going to discuss during that time. Before that, I'll try to cover the CKD. तो जो भी लोगों ने CKD के लिए रजिस्टर किया था, they can start preparing for their exams and give the exams. एग्जाम क्लियर कर लो CKD का. Docker Dev part 3 any planning. We are planning for hackathon next. उसके बाद KCD का preparation जोरों शोरों से चालू होगा. So I'll be busy for that. बट हाँ, नेक्स्ट मंथ एक डॉकर हैकेथॉन होगा. Yes. Any other questions? I'll be here for some time. Just let me know if you have any questions. Apart from my about my course or anything about the classes. Thank you, Kalyan. No, no, definitely no. Hackathon will be offline. आपको आना पड़ेगा location पे and you will need to attend the hackathon. Because I don't know why people were asking about even the live session. जो बाहर पुणे के बाहर है उनके लिए तो ठीक है, but people who are from Pune, they should attend the in-person events. बहुत ज़्यादा benefits हैं. You get the opportunity to network with other people और connections भी आपके ज़्यादा strong बनते हैं. Yeah, still deciding on that. GCP या फिर Azure Cloud. Yeah. One, if you're asking about the liveness and the readiness prop that we already covered, we use the testing of your application. How testing is done for applications deployed in Kubernetes. तो एप्लीकेशन लाइवनेस अगर अगर आप बात कर रहे हो देन यस, ये लाइवनेस प्रॉब एंड हेल्थ चेक प्रॉब्स यूज करके टेस्टिंग होता है. इफ यू आर आस्किंग अबाउट द एप्लीकेशन कोडिंग टेस्टिंग, तो उसके लिए सेम चीज आपको फिर से इमेज वगैरह बना के choose करना होगा. And that thing actually testing doesn't happen inside the Kubernetes. That's not part of your application code. वो testing का code जो आप बात कर रहे हैं, that will be taken care by the CI/CD pipeline. So before building your Docker image, you need to add one extra step to test your code before the Docker image build. And बाकी का प्रोसेस Kubernetes deployment वगैरह होगा. Regarding attending meetup of outside to India, yes, yeah, जो लोग जिन लोगों को possible नहीं है to attend this in-person meetup, yes, for them only we arrange this live sessions and the YouTube live जो Dr. Dev का हुआ था. But I was talking about the people who are near to Pune. कुछ लोग तो they came long way from just to attend the Docker Day event. तो उससे क्या होता है? The people who are coming to those meetup, they know that this person has came for long way just to attend this kind of meetup and to gather the knowledge, and they sense the enthusiasm from them. If there is some kind of opportunity, definitely I would prefer someone who has been in my contact or who I know and who was there in my meetup. Correct. If I don't know the person, remote person, that will be difficult. जो पर्सनल बॉन्डिंग जो होता है दैट आई फील कि इन पर्सन में बहुत ज़्यादा लेवल पे होता है. एंड ऑल्सो द बेनिफिट्स आर नेक्स्ट लेवल फॉर इन पर्सन. मेरी try to attend the KCD Pune. It's in India, just a one time event. It's a Kubernetes festival, kind of Diwali. बहुत बहुत ज़्यादा सेशंस होने वाले एंड वी आर कीपिंग द वेरी मिनिमल प्राइस व्हेन इट comes to the money. And I always think about my students because I've been a student. I come from a um, very the background of family background मेरा farming है, so I know it's very difficult to give course prices, huge course prices, or to attend the events which are charging you humongous prices. तो मेरे जो इवेंट्स होते हैं तो मोस्टली फ्री में रखता हूँ, अदरवाइज आई चार्ज वेरी स्मॉल फीस. ओके. केसीडी बैंगलोर तो हो गया ना भाई. केसीडी बैंगलोर, मुंबई, चेन्नई अभी चल रहा है. Expected date, yeah, I'll let you know soon, but it will be at the end of October or November in this year. Yeah, I'd love to meet you in person. You are amazing person. मतलब आप जितना अभी प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो, it takes a lot of time to be such a consistent, the learner. Yeah, so Ajay, your question was after the start of the container, does the readiness prop stops executing? Um, डेट बताना थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा. आई थिंक वी आर गोइंग टू कंफर्म दिस KCD event dates soon in this week or next week early. Readiness probe. It hang on. I'll go here. Okay, are you seeing my screen या freeze हो गया? Okay, yes. So ये वाला statement पढ़ो. Readiness probes runs on the container during its whole time life cycle. Liveness probes do not wait for readiness probe to succeed. If you want to wait before executing, this is a different thing. But yes, it keeps on executing during its whole life cycle. Yeah, and yes, so the people who have registered for my DevOps batch 2, um, thank you and see you soon in our classes. नो आज आपने सुना नहीं शायद 29th या 22nd इट्स स्टिल नॉट कंफर्म कोई घाई नहीं है मैं बता दूंगा आपको कि कब स्टार्ट होने वाला एक्चुअली आई नीड टू टेक्स ब्रेक बिफोर स्टार्टिंग माय सेकंड बैच अब मुझे डिसाइड करना है कि व्हेन मुझे देखना है व्हेन वी कैन एंड ऑफ दिस CKD बैच and before starting second batch I'll take a break for a few days. If it happens between 22nd and 29, then good. Otherwise, थोड़ा सा push हो सकता है. But mostly maximum 29th, I try. Yeah. सबको लगा इससे my energy has fallen. Now बहुत काम करना है and breaks बीच बीच में लेता हूँ. I make sure I I take breaks in between. Yeah, thank you. ओके सो एनर्जी तो आपसे ही मिलते वी हैव अमेजिंग लर्नर्स लोगों ने कितने लोगों ने रजिस्टर किया है फॉर सीकेडी बट दैट्स वो बोलते हैं ना कि इसमें उनका घाटा इफ दे आर नॉट अटेंडिंग दिस फ्री सेशंस व्हाट वी कैन एल्स वी कैन डू वी कैन pull them and ask them to sit and attend this live session जहाँ पे we get interact to each other and learning भी amazing हो रहा है so इसमें उनका घाटा है but I'm continuing this session only for this 10 12 20 जितने भी लोग आ रहे हैं for them I'm going to make it I'm going to finish it CKD sessions you are giving too much. हाँ but क्या कर सकते हैं? When I announced it, I said it will be a free. Yeah. But no worries. जितने लोग हैं उनके लिए I am going to finish it. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Thank you guys. Have a weekend तो almost end हो गया है. बट जितना भी बचा है एंजॉय कर लो. कल से फिर से ऑफिस कॉलेज वर्क सब कुछ चालू हो जाएगा. Okay, keep practicing, keep learning. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. And I have one more session, so I'll need to jump there. And thank you. Have a wonderful week ahead. See you soon. Bye.
The recording has stopped.